Forgot to dance.
Forgot to dance. Oh, well.
Too many things happening around me. I'm really sorry and apologize for that. I know that there's people that tune into the show just for that. So
yeah, now they can just leave because they've been disappointed.
Yeah, it's not the way to start the day, is it? So
I tell you to spin around, but then I think you'd hurt yourself, and I don't want that to happen. So
I've been doing a lot of that, hurting myself lately. Crutches a couple weeks ago. It's never ending as you age, right?
Well, I hope not, but
well, you're older than I am.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. You doing okay? You're just back from New York. Busy few days there.
Doing okay. Up early, up bright and early, ready to go. But let's see how long that is.
It'll zap you tomorrow, right?
Yeah, probably.
That's when it'll hit. Cool. Well, glad you're back. You and some of our team members were back working on some pretty cool technology stuff and building some amazing agents and doing some powerful stuff. So we're excited about that and looking forward to seeing that built into the products at LeadSmart soon. So why don't we get ready to kick off here? I'm Kevin Brown. I'm here every week with my good friend and co-founder of LeadSmart Technologies and co-host of this show, Tom Burton. And we get together with a handful of great friends that join us on the live show each week and share some comments and thoughts and ideas as we talk about what happened in the news this week. We talk about things like the economy and supply chain and manufacturing and distribution and mergers and acquisitions and sales and marketing and AI and robotics and cybersecurity and all the things that are happening around us with a fast-paced, fast-moving world. We try and pull that together and apply that back to what is that meaning behind that, or what's the meaning behind that and how it impacts both wholesale distributors and manufacturers. So we're appreciative of you being with us. We do this discussion each week by means of the newsletter that we send out. It's called Around the Horn in Wholesale Distribution and Manufacturing. If you do not get that newsletter and would like to, we would love to send that to you. You can certainly reach out to us anytime at hello@leadsmarttech.com, and we'll get that out to you. You can also go to the website for the podcast, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com. You can sign up to get our updates there, as well as you can see past episodes of the show there. You can also, if you're active and regular on LinkedIn, you can very easily just go to the LeadSmart Technologies page. And on the left-hand column, you'll see newsletter, and you can get access to that Around the Horn Wholesale Distribution Manufacturing newsletter there. And we're happy to share that with you as well. So love to get that to you. If you're listening on the recorded podcast, you won't be seeing that newsletter, which will be up on our screen as we discuss some of the different topics there. So we're happy to have you with us. We're at episode 182 this week. So 3.5 years roughly of us doing this on a consistent basis. And we enjoy it and appreciate you guys being with us that choose to come with us and along for this journey each week. We couldn't do the show if we didn't have the support of the company that Tom and I work for. We work for a company called LeadSmart Technologies, and LeadSmart has developed a platform to help wholesale distributors and manufacturers both really solve some challenges that they find in their business. And across wholesale distribution, manufacturing business as a whole, there's data everywhere. There's fragmented data, there's siloed data, and we bring all of that together into a single platform. We call it what we like to look at as a enterprise growth platform that allows you to view the data from across your business, get rid of the silos, look at ERP data, marketing automation, e-commerce, and endless spreadsheets and PDFs and things you have in your business, and bring that together into a single source of truth. We do that through some purpose-built tools. We have a smart CRM solution built into that. We have sales enablement tools, marketing tools, different e-commerce tools to maximize that data and the customer journeys that you're tracking across your business. So if your company is looking to digitally transform and move into an AI age and an agentic ready company, we would love nothing more than to talk with you and share with you more about what we do. So Tom, you want to take it away on the news, or do you have anything else to add to that before we jump in?
No, I'll say good morning to Bob and let him know that it is not okay for him to be multitasking and to be less chatty than usual. So Bob, I would say drop whatever you're doing, and everybody else that's listening, just drop whatever you're doing, because you're going to be mesmerized by the conversation today.
Okay, great.
How's that?
That's a bold, powerful statement.
Yes.
Very good.
Sets
Because
the bar high.
it's not like you ever listen to live shows or podcasts and multitask, right?
Every now and then.
Every now and then. Very good. So, man, so much happening right now. Even stuff happening this morning as we go live at 9 Pacific time. Both of us are here in Southern California. So, as we jump into our supply and chain and economy segment, the Fed holds rates steady, signals caution as oil prices climb amid the war. Any thoughts on this? Pretty much what you said would happen.
Yeah, I mean, what wasn't obviously a surprise that they didn't make any changes in March. We've talked about that. The poly market now for June, though, for June is actually, look at the change here, though, 87% no change. This is the one I wanted to bet on, and I probably would still bet on it. But the odds have even got even higher for, or lower, I guess you'd say, for any decrease in the June meeting. I think this was 50 or 60% last week when we looked at it. So some pretty significant change in sentiment around the rate cut opportunity. I think that obviously this is going to be driven based around what happens with the war and the oil prices.
Absolutely.
From what I understand, though, is that the war could end tomorrow, and it doesn't mean that everything is all back to business as usual with the Strait of Hormuz and how long that takes to get running again. And, so I think there's longer term potential ramifications that I don't think I fully appreciated until kind of doing a little bit more homework. And if you go look at some of the maps, like the shipping maps and stuff like that, there's a lot of ships clogged up there.
Yeah. If you look at the AIS data of the ships in there, what's interesting too is I think I wasn't paying attention to this well enough previously, but I was getting gas the other day, $125 to fill my gas tank, and that was at Costco. So but a woman at the pump next to me was complaining about gas prices, and reasonable, right? And should I, president saying we only get like 2% of our gas comes through the Strait of Hormuz and blah, blah, blah. And why are we paying this? And, I think I didn't say this to her, but, what's going through my head is, the gas prices that we're paying here, while the fuel that we're getting right now was already long since landed, but they're tying all of this to the marketplace for that. And that is an international marketplace. It's not a Southern California marketplace, right? So prices are prices, whether we're here or whether we're in the U.S. or not. It's a broader impact than we're thinking about. Now, it would be nice if the prices that we were paying at the pump here or wherever you're at in the country was really what was paid for the supply that you're actually pumping. But it's just not the way it is. So it's going to be what it's going to be, and this is impacting a lot of things, not just, we're going to see some adjustments and some things, probably some consumer sentiment and the PCE and so forth, with some adjustments coming up soon too.
Well, and the way that certainly large companies, obviously but how the oil companies work, the airlines work, big consumers of oil and gasoline, they buy futures as well.
Exactly. So right. Great point.
They don't just go and buy the spot market as this is what it costs today. When oil prices are down, you buy futures and you leverage those futures for things like this. So
that's a great point.
The fact of the matter is, right, this is a very profitable boon, I believe, for most of the oil companies right now, because yes, they're leveraging the current crisis and the current spot price and saying, well, that is affecting what they paid 6 months ago, a year ago, either through their futures agreement or even pre-purchase of what they were doing. Now, if it all of a sudden drops tomorrow, right, if oil went from 110 to 75 tomorrow, my guess is the prices of gasoline would not correspondingly drop that much comparatively. That's so, there's definitely some games being played there.
Well, and you think about it too, is I haven't looked yet, but I would assume, and I think your point is really, really valid and related to, and I think it's, I'm sure trucking fleets or trucking organizations probably do this at some level as well. And a UPS, a FedEx, and so forth, along with the airlines buying, the futures. And I mean, I remember reading something in the past of some of the airlines buying, multi-years out. They have contracts for their fuel. But I could pretty much guarantee you that if I went and looked at a flight to Chicago from here in Orange County, yesterday versus 3 weeks or a month ago, they would probably be significantly higher with, a fuel, component of that, even though it's not really impacting them. So I think, this is just the bummer of the place that we live in, right? But there are some things that we're stuck with as consumers, right? I don't know about you, but I can't stop putting gas in my car.
Yeah, and it's not just California. We were talking to the Uber driver in New York, and he said it's gone up basically 50%. So it went from about 250 to 260 to about 360. So more or less 50% increase in that time frame.
I paid $5.89 at Costco on Wednesday for gas.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
Isn't that crazy? So, and then when we were when we were in Texas together in February?
It was 216.
Yeah. So something like that. So anyways, that's where we sit right now. So interest rates where they are, one of the interesting things here that Powell was talking about, right, is looking for that balancing act, of our inflation and jobs and finding that delicate balance, right? When we had 92,000 jobs lost that I think we talked about here on the show 2 weeks ago, gas prices are up 31%, according to the particular article that we posted here. This one's from CFO Dive. Unemployment's at 4.4%. PCE inflation's at 3.1%, and they still want to get back to 2, right? So, and that's where they're at. So there was even discussion this week about that. It's interesting. I know I listen to the news more than you do. Specifically, I just, oftentimes have CNBC on in the car in the background sometimes. And, there you could find any opinion you wanted over the last couple of days about what's going to happen this year. I don't think I heard anybody talking about more than one reduction, but there was discussion.
Per the articles here, 2 is what is now the forecast, down from potentially 6 at one point.
But the question came to Powell in the news conference was, what about a raise? And there's a whole nother group of people that are talking about, recession risks and the things that go with all of these things. And so listen, it's just funny. I think I'd love to go back and look at our very early shows to see if we were a little bit smoother. I think when we first started doing the show, Tom, we had a little bit more stability within the economy in general, but it's the last 2.5 years, it's just been, boil, simmer, tepid, and we just go back and forth with this. And the challenge is with fuel prices, right? All the other prices are going to increase so much more. I mean, you can't go to Subway for under $12 anymore, Yeah,
well, that's what they said. A lot of the fuel and lodging prices have gone up significantly. One thing that to keep in mind, right, is there's a difference between true inflation, which is when there's more money entering the system, and increased costs, right? Those are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the increased cost of oil is not because more money has entered into the system. It's because there is perceived scarcity of what it is, which is bringing up the costs that are there. And a lot of times when we had to raise interest rates back during the COVID or post-COVID period, it was because all of this money, and that's what drove the inflation, entered into the system, right? The amount of money into the system increased significantly, which creates the inflation because there was more money floating around than there was before.
Right.
We don't have that situation currently. We have increased costs. So we hear these words thrown around like they're interchangeable, but they're not exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. So they have to be looked at it. So to me, the reason I bring that up is the idea of raising rates at this point, actually makes no sense, in my opinion. That's not going to help the situation with increased cost. If there was more money entering in the system, then potentially a rate increase would make sense. But it doesn't make sense. I can't see where there'd be any value in doing that at this point. I could see from a headline perspective and just, people could throw that around. And I don't know, maybe you got some more data from the news you listen to, but to me, I just can't see anything that would, if you're talking about recession or stagflation or, any of those things, adding an interest rate increase is not going to help that.
Right. So it brings up a great question. What happens, and I'm glad you brought that up and described the way you did. What happens if we all of a sudden now go flood over the next, you were saying Q4, I'm saying early next year, and we start flooding what is $189 billion back into the economy with tariff refunds?
That could have a true inflationary impact. Absolutely.
Yep.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to watch this. So we're going to talk about tariffs more in a few minutes here, but it wouldn't be the show without us talking about tariffs, right? So
of course it goes.
Yeah. Well, to go with that, another article that we have there talks about wholesale prices rising 0.7% in February, much more than expected, and up almost 3.5% annually. So, we're just watching these things, and I mean, this oil, I haven't listened to the president or the administration talk enough about this, but the impact of the oil right now in fuel prices, I guess, is really hitting at a bad time, right? We already have crazy pricing in there, and we look at this producer price index again going up. Food prices it talked about rose in the same article. This was from CNBC from Wednesday, and food prices up 2.4%, while energy was up 2.3%. And within that same food index, fresh and dry vegetables soared 48.9%. So it's just that we are going to see a huge pinch on lower wage earners. There was a discussion I heard this morning on the news just talking about the credit markets and the what do they call that? What do they call the markets for high interest credit rates for a higher risk?
Private credit or bond?
Yeah, it's more consumer based, higher risk credit. It'll come to me in a moment. But anyways, the idea, so it's really tying to credit card balances and things like that, and just the fact of what we're seeing within the pricing. I mean, I literally in the last 2 weeks I've brought my lunch to work a couple of times, and it's not that lunch costing $3 more impacts the Brown household considerably, but it's like this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I was in New York City. If you want to see,
I was just thinking that.
If you want to see high cost on everywhere you turn a corner, right?
How much was a slice of pizza?
The pizza actually was the most reasonably priced, but a large pizza was $40.
Okay.
Put it that way. I mean, that's kind of absurd for a large pizza. It was a good large pizza. But that was cheaper than some of the other things that we definitely saw.
Yeah. So Peter Luger's was a little more expensive this time.
I didn't go to Peter Luger's this time. That's not on my budget.
Not in your budget. That's what I do, right?
That's what you do. Yeah, that's a Kevin trip. That's not a Tom trip.
That's okay. Very different. And we need the balancing act there, right? All right. Where do you want to jump here as we continue in our economy and supply chain section? Got a handful of other articles there.
Well, just before we wrap up on the inflation front, right? One of the, there's two things I think to be keeping an eye out for here.
Yep.
One is affordability, which is what we're talking about, is going to be a key topic on the midterms. Is
huge. Yeah.
Right. So politically, there is a real, if you look at the current administration, the affordability factor is not improving. It's worse on a lot of fronts, right? So, and that was a big promise, right, is affordability.
Yep.
The second is, interestingly enough, and I don't remember which of those articles it talked about this, but the consumer is still spending strongly and is still spending, right? So they're still going to Subway and buying $12 sandwiches, or John's Pizzeria and buying $40 pizzas, which, by the way, was packed with people.
Oh, sure.
So it's
well, you were in Times Square on spring break.
Off Times Square.
Okay. Oh, can't hear you, Tom.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
It was weird. It was just all of a sudden it said your mic has been muted. Did you do that? Did you like get tired of listening to what I was?
You don't give me the power to do that. You've got the controls.
It just was like, it kind of was like the gong. It was like it was shutting me off.
Yeah, we haven't heard you with your Kramer, Jim Kramer sound stuff today.
But anyway, but the consumer is still spending. On top of that, the consumer is being resilient, at least so far. On top of that, and despite all the costs and the affordability issues.
Well, and the critical issue that we're talking about here, right, is how does this impact households and businesses as it aligns with our market that we talk to day in and day out within the wholesale distribution world, right? Yeah. Is that key? So those prices are going to be going up, whether it's on a piece of PVC or a piece of lumber, a tool, whatever it might be, and that's going to drive through. I mean, I do our show from home each week before I go into the office, and there's people here in our bathroom installing a new. In fact, we've had some home things done 2 different days this week, and both times this could be internal manipulation by the banker in this household that is known as my wife, but. Both times prices have been almost, at least a third higher than what had been originally discussed.
You mean based upon what they estimated, or?
Yeah, I think what they estimated and what she wanted done, but some of them, I guarantee you, some of it's tied to some of the costs and pricing that goes with it. Okay. So, but anyways, the long and the short of it is there is going to be pressure across the board as we see, fuel rates are rising, obviously, which means trucking rates go up, which means delivery costs go up, right? Distributor that's running their own fleets, they're going to be running into the same thing. So it's going to be a challenge for a bit. Yep. So, all
right,
let's jump. There's a couple things worth talking about related to tariffs this week, and we talked about last week that the U.S. had launched a series of these Section 301 probes. It has expanded dramatically, and this 301 probes is the additional view, right? As we've talked about, but I think as I was looking just at LinkedIn, let alone our other audiences, but as in our LinkedIn audience, there's quite a few new people joining us today on the show. We spent a lot of time talking about tariffs over the past year, and we're coming up on, I guess, the week after next will be a year since Liberation Day. And so Supreme Court struck down the IEPA, the Emergency Powers Act, and now we knew, and we talked about it for a couple of months. In fact, we talked about the entire time that the Supreme Court had the case, that there was many other statutes. Well, now what's being used is this Section 301, which now requires investigations into the different practices. Some of these are related to labor, forced labor issues, and so forth. So there's a great article. This is from last week, late last week, about some additional 60 economies are being looked at in this setting. So everybody is under scrutiny right now regarding this, and it's basically just this focus on there's 16 economies in particular that are being looked at because of excess capacity, and that undercuts or undermines U.S. markets. And then 60 different countries, including parts of the EU, Mexico, and India, about forced labor, and they're basically failing to curb imports of goods made with forced labor. So we thought, we heard about this years and years ago regarding the forced labor thing about or underpaid labor with, Nike and some Southeast Asian countries and different brands like that. But this is rearing its head again in all of this. And I think we're going to see more out of this.
Yep. Well,
So,
yeah, I mean, they're definitely going to have to, some, things to look at there, right? They're going to have something to base the investigation around.
of course.
The
Yep.
forced labor one is an interesting one. I don't know if they've got other categories. You mentioned there's a couple that that will be built around, but that sounds like the majority of the economy or the different countries are being covered under that they are looking to, have agreements with.
Yes. The interesting component of that, Thomas, and why I brought that up is it ties really well to. Let me just reference this. I just looked this up real quick since we talked about it. Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974 allows the Office of the United States Trade Representative to investigate and impose trade sanctions, primarily tariffs, on foreign countries that engage in unfair, unreasonable, or discriminatory trade practices that burden the U.S. So targeted sectors, it said, typically are around steel, aluminum, semiconductors, and electronics, and then general manufacturing as well. So they can, the remedies out of that are they can restrict imports, seek agreements, and or impose additional sanctions and tariffs on that. So the interesting component of that, and why I think it's worth talking about today, is because this impacts very significantly, right? Both manufacturers and wholesale distributors. We've talked to, ad nauseum about the whether these tariffs will be, the rebates will go into effect and how people will get their money, whether they will or not, or when it will be. We've got some wagers even writing on that. But earlier this week, we had, was it the Prime Minister? I believe it was the from Japan visiting the White House for multiple days. That was interesting to see as what were they going to come up with right now as far as the so-called high stakes discussions. It was Prime Minister Takaichi, and was at the White House for multiple days, and she was there. And the question had arisen is what would come out of that related to, one, whether they were going to support the U.S. in helping clean up and clear out the Hormuz Straits, of helping get oil through, and whether they would be supporting that. But a big component of it was back to the tariff discussion. And there was additional agreements that came out of this on additional investments, and then moving forward, particularly in significant levels with what they've already started on. So we see this where now we've got quite a few different countries, and I'm trying to just find where I have this particular article. I think it's here. And bear with me a second here, Tom. Yeah. So there was the EU this week took their next step on ratifying ratifying their agreement and their trade deal. There's obviously some concerns that they have about what's going on in the Middle East, in the Iran conflict. But they hit pause 2 weeks ago, but this week took major steps forward in adopting and ratifying the agreements that they have. So I think this is not to pat myself on the back, but I think what we are seeing from most of these countries is European Union's getting ready. And this was as of yesterday that they took action and they cleared the path for a final vote on things. The UK is kind of continuing moving forward. Japan's full speed ahead. South Korea, I believe it was last week, and Taiwan ratified their agreements. And there's a deal in place with India as well as of February. So I don't think we're seeing with this, Tom, is that people are coming back and waving a flag and saying, ha ha, this got struck down, we're going to restructure these deals. Because I think two components of it, right? We've got a number of Middle Eastern countries, and specifically Japan and Taiwan, and certainly the European Union. The European Union's view of this is, hey, you know what? We're not going to charge any tariffs on the U.S. and balanced trade is looking promising out of this. And I think, I don't want to say any one of us are right or wrong through all of this, but my belief all along has been everybody looked at this and said, why would we not do this and follow through on what we said? Because they've got a pretty big hammer and lots of other ways to go get these tariffs in place.
Yeah, no, I think I think there's that. I think there's also, if you look at this intelligently, right? If you're a Europe or Japan or whatever, working with the U.S. rather than against them is just a smarter move, right?
Yeah,
and it'll open up the door to more favored nation status on other things. And I think Japan has leaned into it maybe more than any of the other countries, or as much as in other countries. But I think if yes, at the end of the day, trying to fight this, I don't see that that's going to. You can fight it and kind of try and see if you can end up on top. You're not really going to end up on top because it's going to be one thing or another.
Right.
And I just think a lot of these countries are recognizing that, hey, let's see if we can work a good deal with the U.S. and actually make it potentially a win-win for both sides.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that EU's agreement is 15 or 16% on EU goods coming to the U.S. and none, and the U.S. paying none. So it's good. Anything further on economy and supply chain? Or you want to kind of jump ahead?
No, let's get moving.
All right. Where do you want to stop next? And we're in our manufacturing, distribution, and M&A section. As we jump ahead again, if you don't get the newsletter that's up on the screen that you may or may not be seeing, whether you're listening to the recorded version of the podcast or you're live with us, you can certainly reach out to us anytime at hello@Lead Smart Tech, and we'll get this newsletter out to you quickly. Any particular points hit you here?
I read that article that Trump tariffs are hurting American manufacturers, and so if you wanted to see a partisan article, that was a partisan article.
Yes.
And
that was from AP. Go figure.
Yes. A good example of some, unfortunately, the partisan news coverage that we get here.
Yep.
Right.
I laugh, and we have quite a few people from other parts of the world. I think we typically have 5 to 7 different countries that tune in with us on LinkedIn, and even more than that listen to the podcast when I look at the maps. But in this country, and I'm sure it's this way in plenty of other countries, you can look at a topic like tariffs or interest rates, and you can go from one network to the next network and feel like you're in a completely different universe on the opinions of whether something is good or bad. So it's well,
the reason is, right, there is no black or white. There's a lot of shades of gray, right? This is the middle of it. So
it depends on what you want to accomplish.
That's right.
Yeah. So anyways, interesting. There is from our friends at Hardy, that HVAC trade group, talked about in Supply House Times. They do a monthly trends report, and that they showed that sales are off for typical HVAC distributors through January of 5.9%. So that is pretty significant fall off. We talked to, I haven't been on the phone or talked to anybody in the distribution this year so far that is giving me any indications that there's anything dramatic happening in their business. Most of the folks that we talked to last, solid years, not banner years, but solid years with overall good growth. And so we'll see what comes out of that next.
I think we even touched on this last week. I believe part of it is some projects have been slowed down because of the weather and the cold weather in the Northeast and the snow and all that kind of stuff. That's another thing. You learn a lot from Uber drivers in New York City.
Yeah.
He was saying, there's a lot of construction and projects have been really slowed down given the weather, the unusual weather they've had in New York this year. And with the snow and things like that, things just either come to a halt or they, slow down significantly. And I think that was part of what this was here, is some of the projects and things that were supposed to have moved at a certain pace or moving slower than expected.
Yeah. The I think what we don't think about in other parts of the country, you know, and well, let me rephrase that. In the western part of the country, where the majority of the western U.S. sees much less snow than the rest of the country, we don't really think about what happens in that setting, right? That you look at. I mean, you were just in New York. Was there any snow still on the sidewalks or in the corners? And can't hear you, Tom.
It's weird. It's all of a sudden deciding to mute my microphone. There was no snow on the ground, but the high for the 3 days we were there was 35 degrees. And most of the mornings when we were walking to the office, it was in the 20s, mid 20s.
Wow. Okay. You went away again.
The wind chill was less than even that. So pretty significant.
Yeah. Well, I think what happens with it, and my point I was going to make is that, you know, we don't think about this living in California, maybe Arizona, and even Texas and other parts of the South and Southwest, is that the impact on two things happen, right? We think about, oh, we saw that there was a storm. We don't think about what's the impact of that is going on weeks later still, because of the delays in the supply chain, the deliveries that didn't get made, the projects that didn't get going. I was in Washington, D.C. in January, the National Association of Wholesalers event. And that's when the big, 10-year storm or whatever came through in that setting. And across the street, looking at my hotel window off to the left was a construction site that there was a major renovation. It looks like an addition going on, probably a 20-story building or so. And, there's multiple days there, no work being done. In fact, I don't think I saw any workers there the entire time I was in DC for 5 days. And in that setting, and that just pushes those projects way, way back. Mm-hmm. And it impacts, right, the distributors down the road that are supposed to be delivering stuff to that site for the project and progress that they're needing to be made. So it's an interesting phenomena, I guess, that the trickle down effect that comes from that. Good. So there's a good article, though. Just if you get our newsletter, take a look at that. It's called "Powering and Manufacturing Resilience with Data and People" from Industry Today, and we don't need to go into the depths of that, but it just does tie to the world that we live in. Kind of talked about it at what we do at Lead Smart at the beginning of the show, and another LinkedIn article that I saw this morning talking about just the abundance that's available of data specifically to wholesale distributors, but manufacturers as well. And but if you think about historically, we've thought about things in the distribution world as our holy grail, and all focus is on our ERP or our accounting data, and that is truly just become one component and one journey that a customer has. And we have just so much more data available to us that with modern technology, we're able to gather e-commerce and marketing and CRM data and other structured data like spreadsheets and so forth, and bring all of that data together to make business decisions on. And the article is "Powering Manufacturing Resilience with Data and People." And the beauty of it is, I think we're going to be seeing more and more of this and it just goes back. I need to go research a little bit. I think about this all the time as we think about job losses, and depending on what your opinions on things, but some people think we're going to have major job losses, other things we're going to create jobs, but through the use of AI and other technologies. But I know that Mr. Musk, the creator of Tesla and Optimus Robots and SpaceX and Starlink and all of his other companies, is saying that we will be at a point because of AI where we'll choose if we want to work or not, which just still astounds me how he could believe that. But I think we're going to continue to see more and more about data, AI, and people combining for great business decisions and great outcomes. But there will continue to be a people factor.
Well, there will definitely be a people factor. I know this isn't the topic of where we want to be, but I don't think I know it will not be a so much a loss of jobs as a transformation of jobs. And it was funny just looking around some of the offices we were in and things like that this last week, and the things that people were working on. And you can just look and go, the way that they were going about work is changing rapidly and will continue to change rapidly.
Yep.
Sorry, my microphone just StreamYard here is just muting me. It's just randomly muting me. I don't understand. So I'm trying to quickly unmute myself when it does that. But yes, the jobs that we've historically known to be true, and the roles in those jobs, the responsibilities, are going to be very different. And that's where I think where I think there's concern is, I don't know that we have the skill set or the employees available to do some of these new jobs, or these new types of jobs, I should say, not so much new jobs, but new types of jobs that are there. So anyway, that's a little off track from what we were getting.
No, I think it's going to tie to some other things that we're going to talk about here, kind of moving forward a little bit as well, with that. But I think we're going to continue to see the changes. Why don't we use that opportunity to jump into our latest news and updates and tools within AI section of the newsletter, Tom, as well. There's some.
Do I sound any better now? Because I switched back to the other mic, and
you do, yeah, yep. You know, we all have the hiccups here and there that we're relying on trying to do, and that's the downside of a live show, right? Is we've had, I don't know, hopefully it's been close to a month now where I've had to leave the show and come back in and reboot a router and all kinds of stuff. So it's just the risks you take by doing a live show, but we've been doing it for 3.5 years, and I think we're going to continue to. I talk to people all the time that, no, we don't want to go live because we want to be able to edit and do this or that. And you know what? People should be able to see you pick your nose or my microphone not work or whatever it might be. I think that people like the live and to get a little
add a little variety to it.
A little variety to it. So our first article in here was from CNBC talking about employers saying AI boosting productivity, but also creates some friction and mistrust. So a few different things to talk about in our AI section today, including some action that the government has taken as well. So any takeaways on that particular CNBC article, Tom?
Well, I think the first article and the third one here, the one from MDM, are similar.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
It seems to be a perception at the.
Well, let's, Tom, before you go on, we've got people that are listening and not looking at the newsletter. So you mentioned two different articles. So the first one was employers say AI boosts productivity, but also creates some friction and mistrust. That was from CNBC. And then you referenced Modern Distribution Management. 86% of executives say AI use is required, but less than half of managers agree with that. So let's kind of recap both of those.
Yeah. Well, and they're both similar, right? So basically what they're saying is at the executive level, there is a perception that AI is predominantly being used in our organization, and we're getting, I won't say great results, but we're getting decent results from the use of AI across the organization. What happens is you go down the food chain and you actually look to see, is in fact that true? It doesn't seem to be the case for different reasons. As I talk about here, there's friction at the employee level, there's concern, or if they are using it, are they using it in a way that is actually creating valuable results and valuable outcomes versus just creating a bunch of work slop or noise along the way. Right.
Tom, you just used a phrase there. Let's talk about that work slop thing. We're starting to hear that more and more. How do you view that?
I view that as when you go to AI and you say, write me a letter or an article or an email or whatever, and it just kind of comes up with this sort of, I don't know, usually it's hypey and full of lots of words and emojis and stuff like that, and it really doesn't actually say a whole lot. And that comes from, it's not that the AI is being bad, it generally comes from lazy prompting, right? And lazy instructions. And when you do lazy instructions, you'll get lazy results, right? And that's what when you see this quote unquote work slop.
Yeah, I wonder if it's sometimes lazy or lack of understanding or training.
I think it's more lazy. You mean on the people, or?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
look, we've
yeah,
got
yeah,
we see
yeah.
this
No,
all
I
the
would agree with that. Right.
yeah.
It's not that they know how to create a great prompt or how to create a great instruction, just don't do it. They don't know any better, but it's still a pretty sad prompt, right?
Yeah.
That's put into the sad set of instructions.
No, I think the reality of where that comes from is companies that are just going out and saying either, BYO AI, bring your own AI, or they're just going out and saying, hey, we bought Claude for the company, or we bought Chat GPT for the company, and there's no training, there's no guardrails, there's nothing that goes along with that. So I think we're seeing this as a whole. I think there's also some of the mistrust. Well, this article actually references it. There's it actually, the CNBC article talked about 61% of employees worried about ethical and safety risks. And you start thinking about it, you start wondering, well, how is my boss using AI to monitor me? How is my HR department tracking different things using AI? I remember just as we were kind of getting LeadSmart started years and years ago, we co-located our offices with a customer, and imagine, there was a mindset there that said, they were tracking mouse movements and keyboard movements and for productivity with people, and taking screenshots of their browser every 5 seconds or whatever it was. And imagine if you take that mindset that that company had to today with the AI tools that would be available to be monitoring what people are doing and tracking productivity. No wonder people would be uncomfortable with some of that.
Sure. No, I mean, there's lots of reasons here for people to be uncomfortable down at the middle management or the worker level.
Mm-hmm.
What these articles are saying, there is a disconnect between the perception at the executive level versus the reality of what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And yes, there's lots of reasons for that. We could get into all the reasons or things that you could do to close that gap. And there's lots of reasons for it, but it makes sense to me based around, especially I could see this in larger companies with especially large managerial hierarchies, right? As to me would be the ones at the highest risk.
Yeah. Interesting, thoughts as you looking at that. I just want to go back. I was just looking at a few notes that I had here about the two kind of factors. When you're going back to work slop, they were talking about that. I've watched a couple of companies recently that make technology for wholesale distributors, and talking about, they've got some tools that'll write the emails for you. Well, I think that is an interesting idea, but where are the guardrails on that? Where are the tools that make that accurate? And who's responsible internally for that? If what comes out of that is misinformation about a shipment, or the inventory data that the system pulled is not correct, and so forth. And I think, one of the, and again, here we are in the technology business that make a software platform for wholesale distributors. I wish people would ask us more about things like, how accurate is your data and how secure is your platform? Because I see people looking out there and chasing shiny objects, so to speak, about a new AI tool, this or that. But are they asking the deeper and the harder questions about, hey, how accurate is this going to be, and what are we going to get from this, and so forth? And because the reality of it is, it's not only the risk that you have if you sent something out and we're relying on your technology that was incorrect, it's the amount of additional work that gets created to go solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Is pretty powerful in that setting. So I think we're in I think we're in the warm-ups, let alone say, here sometimes people say we're in the first inning of AI. I think we might even be in batting practice right now.
Oh, I think so too. I think there's the perception of what AI is, right? And versus what it has the potential to be, not just in the future, but even now, right? There's a large gap there, but it's every day the gap gets larger, right? And so what people believe is effective AI use, or hey, we're using ChatGPT, or we're using, you know, and I think coding is an area where that what I'm saying is a little bit different. I think coding and software engineering, the depth and the level of outcomes that have been created from that are pretty extraordinary. But
Yeah.
outside of coding, there has not been a clear use case of which companies have adopted and gotten that. But there are use cases I'm seeing, we're working on these, right? There are use cases that, if in fact were adopted, could have outcomes that are just as significant, if not more, than the outcomes received by the coding applications that are out there.
Yes. Yep. That's good.
So,
Well, I think, you kind of brought this up earlier about, and there was a component of this CNBC article. They talked about the human mode, about automation handles the routine, but it cannot handle strategic. Now, I think there are people that would argue that maybe, especially some of the things we're seeing lately coming out of Claude, is maybe they can handle the strategic. I mean, I'm seeing constantly things coming up about, different prompts to give that, the buzzword is, make Claude become your McKinsey, $700 an hour person, whatever it might be. And I think there's some tools with that, but I think we're going to be a long way away from being able to dump all of the human knowledge and human capacity that we have to really get this. But this was a conversation from the ADP, the payroll company chief economist. He was talking about that automation handles the routine, but it cannot handle the strategic, is what they're putting it. The antidote is AI friction that gets caused here is upskilling your people. And I think that's really what we need to do. And it goes back to, your comment about work slop earlier as well, right? Is the idea of like, let's get these people trained and understanding and having the right tools. I mean, I think what I love about some of the agents and the work that your team is doing right now is, right, we can be in a platform where we have access to CRM and we have access to other tools and sales enablement tools, all built within the same platform. But what we need to use, but we're analyzing is we're asking questions, we're looking across our organization versus just some specific silos of data. So I think that becomes more and more powerful. And when we're doing it that way, as opposed to buying lots and lots of tools and then training our people how to use lots of tools, we can train people on fewer tools ideally.
Yeah, I believe there's going to be fewer tools in the future, but the tools that we're using are going to require a level of knowledge, I guess, or skill. Maybe skill is the right word to use there. Mm-hmm. That are different than the current SaaS products that we're used to using today.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think there's going to be more of the do it for me versus having to go do so much work, right? Mm-hmm. If I think about an inside salesperson at a distributor, or a warehouse manager at a manufacturer, or a field salesperson, or an executive at a distributor, the ability to go into a single place and look across their business is coming fast, right?
Yeah.
Coming fast. So that's my hint to stand by and watch for some announcements from your good friends at LeadSmart. So before, Tom, we jump out of our AI segment here, though, there was some breaking news this morning. Early this morning, the Trump administration unveiled a national AI policy framework to limit state power. Now, we've talked quite a bit off and on over the last year or so about the Colorado's been on it, California's talking about it, and about having their AI guardrails and so forth built right within the state guidelines and so forth. And I think what the administration is looking at that is truly how ugly and rocky that could be. You've talked about that quite a bit through our discussions as well.
Hey, yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, gotcha. Yep.
So there's two issues. One is trying to build something with AI and be in alignment with a whole 50 different sets of state rules is virtually impossible, right? Mm-hmm. So all that's going to do is create slowdown, create friction, and so forth. On top of that, the NVIDIA had their conference this week.
Yep.
And some of the things that NVIDIA announced at the conference, and where they're headed and where they're headed technologically, and how technology, remember NVIDIA is moving from just being a chip maker to being basically an application for driving a lot of AI application, other AI applications. So they're not, whether it's robots, whether that's self-driving cars, whether that's, business applications or whatever. Anyway, my point on this is what came out of those meetings or that conference is that a lot of the regulation that had even been created by states is like obsolete. Doesn't make any. So you're going to end up creating state by state regulation that is probably going to be obsolete before it even gets out the door. And you're going to have all of these different variances and permutations across the state, which is honestly almost impossible to comply with. It is impossible to comply with. So, and it'll be impossible to enforce on top of everything else. So the idea of having a national level framework, number one, makes a lot of sense. Two, as long as that framework can be adjusted and kept up to date with what's actually taking place and how things are operating.
So, I mean, imagine, right, if you had, let's just say, 25 states try to enact something like this. Now you have every company that is building using AI tools, and you have every company that makes a language model. Everybody has compliance issues across states. We think tax issues are hard enough to look at nexus across states. It's, that's bad enough when you start thinking about what could come out of this from a standpoint of AI regulation. And we're so early in the game with this. Imagine, having different capabilities for, I'd look at our company, right? If we have, we've got this company that's headquartered in Minnesota that covers these 5 states. Well, I mean, then this is the risk, right? Boiling this down to, how this could impact a wholesale distributor if we did this state by state, right? You could have, just look at your let's just use ERP, right? Think about maybe our friends at Infor that got Steve Levy from Infor joining us on the show here in a few weeks. So Infor starts to add more and more AI tools into the capabilities of their ERP system. If we had, and they have a large customer, say, and we share a great customer with Infor in Wisconsin, and with that company in Wisconsin that has people in, say, 10 different states. If you had this where every state could mandate different things, it could put Infor in a position, or Lead Smarter, whoever it is, right, in a position that says, oh, by the way, Mr. Customer, that you're headquartered in Wisconsin, and your Wisconsin people get these features of our product. Your Minnesota people get all of those, and then these 2 others, but your people in Iowa, they only get a quarter of all of that because these state laws mandate how we're using different models and the things we're able to do. That might sound a little over the top dramatic, but it's actually a true risk that we could run into in those settings. So what the government's saying now is, hey, you know what? We what's that old saying? We're the government. We have your best interest, and we'll take care of you, right? Which might be a little bit of a farce there. But the key pillars that are coming out of this legislation, the president wants this to move very quickly. Tom, we talk about this all the time. One of the podcasts that you and I both enjoy, you introduced me to it 2 or 3 years ago, is the All In podcast. And one of the original founders of the All In podcast is David Sachs, who is the current administration's, they refer to him as the AI and cryptocurrency czar. So I'm sure we're going to hear some things from him on their show shortly. But the pillars around this was a national standardization. I'm just going to kind of hit the key points out of this. I did a little Gemini prompted recap of this. A national standard that preempts a patchwork of state laws to ensure a single federal standard that doesn't hobble innovation. That's probably the biggest component out of this, is restricting innovation, because we're just at such a amazing place right now, and in a race with China to see who can lead all of this, right? Then they tie it to infrastructure and energy. So they're standardizing the permitting process and managing the high energy demands of AI data centers. Huge, right? If you're you were mentioning NVIDIA, right, or Amazon or whoever it is that wants to be building data centers, right? If you've got data centers that are crossing state lines, and I could see this if you allow the states to do it, look at, hate to say this, but the People's Republic of California that we live in, you could see the difference. I mean, California as it is almost two different states between Northern and Southern California. You could see ramifications of this going on what data centers can do in Northern California or by county, being ugly in that setting. Then they talk about safety and ethics, implementing new child safety rules for online AI products, intellectual property, addressing complex legal issues regarding the IP rights in the age of generative AI. And then they described it as free expression, creating rules to prevent AI systems from being used to silence or censor lawful political expression. And then economic competitiveness, aiming to maintain a global lead over competitors like China. So from what I've read about this so far, it sounds like a really good idea to me.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for quite a while, right?
But here it is.
Yeah. So again, we'll have to see if it actually can get passed and get through some of the hurdles. But
yeah, this is something that I think has been historically has had pretty good support from a bipartisan standpoint.
Well, we will see. But yes, I think it's absolutely the right thing to.
Although there is a partisan component that says if it came out of the president's mouth, we're voting against it.
That's right.
So so anyways, that's the key to it. So want to jump ahead into our next segment, Tom?
Yeah. This is the technology, cybersecurity, and robotics.
Yep.
There wasn't anything in here that like really was like, oh my God, but I don't know if there's anything.
Are you saying I did a poor job of picking articles this week?
No, I said they were average articles. I didn't say they were poor.
Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha with that. Well, there's a few of them we should just kind of hit here, right? So Digital Commerce 360, our friend Mark Brohan there talked about Amazon pushing 1 hour delivery.
You're moving into the next section.
Yes, I'm sorry. I moved ahead, didn't I? I bypassed.
So you agree that the cybersecurity section is just average, and we'll move on.
Well, here's two components to that. I'm sorry that I did scroll right past that. Thank you for checking me on that. Listen, I don't think we should skip this. I think we should talk about the fact of the importance for, and Tom, you can really speak to this, right? You deal with this every day in talking with and working with our customers. And I'll just ask you this question. I won't ask you to name anybody, or you can even say it in percentages. What percentage of our customers do you think are taking, and not even our customers, of the people we talk to in wholesale distribution in particular, but wholesale distribution and manufacturing, who are truly on top of their game from a cybersecurity standpoint?
20%.
20%.
Yeah.
It astounds me on talking on the, I'll call it the pre-sale and the sales side of things with our team and our company, is how rarely there's any discussion or questions about cybersecurity and or data security. And so 2 articles here, Cybersecurity Dive and IMPO magazine, multiple different people in the medical or med tech world, one in particular, Stryker, go into a hospital room and find a bed or a patient transfer device or something like that that's not from Stryker. That it's just monster companies that are under these attacks. And if they can be hacked and data taken from them, we've talked about Henry Schein and other large folks, and it seems interesting in the medical arena, but the risk there is just so high. And I just think we're in such a place within both manufacturing and wholesale distribution that there should be, I'm not suggesting somebody needs a security officer, but if they've got a chief digital officer or a vice president of technology, cybersecurity just needs to really be ramped up far more than we see on a day in and day out basis. Yep. So anyways, let's jump ahead back into the sales, marketing, and e-commerce.
So a couple articles here around, first of all, Amazon and agentic commerce. I read today, believe it or not, before we went on the show, is that estimates are saying that internet traffic by 2027, there will be more internet traffic from bots than there will be from people. And the number, and think about that, this is one of the things they were talking about in these articles, right? Whereas a person, let's say you're shopping for something, you might go to 5 sites maybe at the most, where a bot could go to 50 sites, or a series of agents could go across 50 sites. So by 2027, the expectation is that the majority of internet traffic will be from agents and bots versus individuals.
Well, that would make perfect sense to me. And then if you think about it to the next level, where, you know, you're seeing that, you know, Elon Musk is talking about the idea of all of us having multiple robots, humanoid robots involved. So let's just say, you know, I don't know how you could figure this out based on income levels, but let's just say 50% of US households had at least one humanoid robot in it, which is, I think that's very, very reasonable to think. That's going to be all day long, every day, all day long, accessing its model over the internet, right? Same idea of all of the agents that you're talking about, right? If I've got a humanoid robot that is looking at inventory levels and scanning my inventories and or grabbing orders and so forth, they're going to be, maybe they're working on an internal network, but they're going to be going out to the internet as well consistently as well.
Yeah, likely. I mean, yeah, the internal cloud or your internal thing is going to, that's not what that's referring to as your internal cloud or whatever. It's referring
I understand that, traffic, but just let me take it from a different standpoint, right? Maybe you have an idea behind this. My view has always been, if I have a humanoid robot at my house and it's supposed to be weeding my garden while I sleep because it's got a camera with lighting on it and sensors, and it can tell the difference between a weed and a rose, right? Is it going to come to me with that built into its model, that it knows the difference between 2 different types of plants and a weed? Or is it going to need to go access the internet to check that every time it needs to make a decision?
In that case, it'll probably be built into its model.
Okay.
Right. But I understand your point, right? I understand your point. These articles weren't, or the article that I read earlier was not so much.
This was about agents, right?
About agents using those things that are there. But yes, clearly, right, whether it's robotics or other things, there is going to be a lot of non-human traffic on the internet that was there. Hey, I'm glad to see Bob back. I wanted to hit his comment here about cybersecurity, because I thought it was quite astute of what he was saying here. Is the reason so few are prepared on the cyber side is they consider it a need, not a want. So they spend as little as possible on it, right? Because you don't want to deal with it, right? Who wants to deal with this? It's not a sexy topic or whatever, until they get hit, and then they want it, and then they will write blank checks for it, right? I think it's something that we don't want to deal with. But I think this is true not just in cybersecurity. I think there is other areas of the organization where there's this, well, yeah, we need to do this, but they don't necessarily want to take the effort or look at what needs to get done to actually make it happen.
Mostly because they don't understand it.
Yeah. Right. I get that. Right.
Yep.
You know, there's a lot of things in our life that I may need, but I don't want to deal with. I think that's an interesting, I would suspect that nobody would say, no, we don't need cybersecurity. But that doesn't mean that they want to take the effort to actually make it happen.
Yep. So Hey, Tom, let's we kind of jumped a little bit down on that agentic commerce piece, which I think is powerful. But the article before that about Amazon pushing 1 hour delivery deeper. I don't know about you, but I've been trying to reduce what I buy on Amazon, but what I have been like recently is I'm seeing more and more and more options for same day, and it's coming particularly quick. So this Amazon pushes for 1 hour delivery deeper into the U.S. And in the article here that Mark Brohan wrote on that have been Tuesday of this week, was it said for sellers, the shift underscores a growing expectation that routine purchases from maintenance, repair, and operations, or MRO supplies, to janitorial and office products can be fulfilled within hours rather than days. And it just the point behind this is the bar is being raised. And we talk consistently about how the B2B, B2C line has been in the past, has been very, very specific. And, this is how B2B works, and this is how B2C works, and they're different. Well, these things are becoming a very gray area right now. And I think that line may need to eventually go away. The idea behind this right now, and the point of this article was, there's a couple of key points. They talked about the consumerization of B2B, and which is what I was just talking about. It says if a buyer can get laundry detergent in 60 minutes, they now expect that an MRO supply, whether it's printer ink or a janitorial bucket or whatever, should have the same window. It says the death of the emergency run. Historically, distributors won on emergencies because a contractor would drive to a local branch. Now Amazon is now bringing the branch to the contractor's job site in under an hour. And that starts there's talks about the economic hurdle that this puts in place, and leveraging, Amazon's leveraging pre-existing massive consumer-funded logistics network, and distributors now must decide, do they invest in expensive micro-fulfillment, or do they lose the urgent share of the wallet? Really good article that Mark wrote here. Mark's been on our show before. And I mean, those are some really big questions is, as Amazon's reach. Now, I think if you maybe sell some very, very unique products or things that have to go on a large, maybe you're not going to get a lumber delivery in an hour or pallets of bricks or whatever it might be. But the idea of an MRO component that says, hey, you know what, Mr. Janitorial Distributor, you don't have anything in your inventory that I can't get from Amazon. And Amazon will get it to my job site, not just my factory, in, let's just say, today, right? And I think where they're headed with this is, well, we're missing this part, right? And this doesn't even address in depth, at least, the idea of drone delivery, right? If they can say, well, hey, let's take an early lunch today on this project, because by the time we get back, the two parts that we need will be here.
Sure.
Powerful. I mean, it's to me, this might be, as we think about, and we spend a lot of time, Tom, I think, when we are specifically when we're talking about the economy and supply chain, where maybe we aren't linking this back to distribution and manufacturing as much as sometimes I'd like to. But this, to me, outside of some of the global economic factors we talked about earlier, this might be the most impactful article in this week's newsletter, in my opinion, to the future decisions that a wholesale distributor is going to have to make, right? Do I give up on this category of products and focus over here because I don't have the capability to deliver in those periods of time, or the margin compression on it is, and the costs that go with it are so overwhelming that I don't even make a move there.
Right. Or I keep limited numbers of those. Yeah, it was interesting. It was a Monday morning when I left to go on the trip. I was up at 3 a.m. And you know how my house is kind of set up. It's, I'm upstairs and looking down, and I kept seeing red lights like flashing in the street, like cars coming. It's like, what's the problem? Is there like a fire truck or whatever out there? I go outside, or I look down the window. I'm not joking. There's like 6 cars going up and down the street delivering Amazon at 3 a.m. and stopping at different places.
On your street.
On my street.
You live on a very quiet street.
And this went on till I was from 3 till when I left at 4:15 or whatever. There was just cars coming up and down the street doing deliveries.
Wow.
And do these people need all this stuff when they wake up in the morning? I don't know.
Well, I think, listen, I think everybody believes that, and there's a comment here, it talks about there aren't many things that I need now. And we've got a microwave society, right? It's funny. It just makes me laugh about that. Our microwave, Darlene and I are empty nesters unless you're visiting. And our microwave broke over a year ago. We haven't replaced it. I've needed it like 3 times. I wished I would have had it, because between the stovetop and the air fryer and the barbecue grill, you know what I did? I bought Jiffy Pop popcorn. I bought like 5 of them. You remember the ones you used to just shake on top of the stove?
Yeah.
It's done in 2.5 or 3 minutes rather than 1.5 minutes. It's just, should we replace it? Yeah, but haven't seen the need. And so, but you look at that from that standpoint and I think about this, regularly. It's like, I'm trying to get myself, think about Amazon, whether I'm buying something for our offices or, for home, is looking at that option that they give us, that they say, hey, combine your purchases. It might be 2 days before you get it, but it's more efficient for the environment and so forth with that. I'm trying to do more of that.
Cars are already driving down the street anyway, so it's not like they're
and then that thing, it's I don't know, dopamine or whatever it is, hits that just go, well, I could have it today still. Wouldn't that be great? Yeah. Don't need it for 2 more days, but that rush that comes from that, I think, is interesting with it. So I think this is impactful to distribution right now, right? When you think about these articles that we've just, looked at, and you talked about the first one, right? From that standpoint is the agentic commerce component going, right? Where we're going to have, our customers' systems talking to our systems, trying to negotiate things with us while they're down the road looking at, my 4 other competitors and their timelines. It's a different world that we are moving into, and it's just far more than I think most people are taking a real close look at.
All right. I know we wanted to try and wrap up a little earlier than usual, or a couple minutes earlier than usual. And there's still like 25 articles left. So
that's not true. There's like 5, but
we haven't looked at all these articles we haven't covered.
No, we're outside of our segment here. We only have a handful of them because we rarely get to the point where we talk about people and leadership.
That's
so
true.
anything else in the sales, marketing, e-commerce segment, we've discussed roughly 3 of them.
Yeah. I think this sales enablement one I'd love to talk about, but we can.
Let's do it. Let's just talk about that. Talk about that. And there's one that I want to hit at the end, and we'll call it a day.
Okay. So this article is from SMM. I believe that's Social Media Marketing.
Sales and Marketing
Magazine or sales
management. Tom, where have you been? We've been putting articles for 2 years in from them. Do you read them?
Yeah, let me. It's Sales and Marketing Management. Yes.
Yes.
I knew that. That.
Good. Very well. So, excuse my friend here, people.
Yeah. So anyway, what this is talking about the fact that, and this is like, look, I wrote a book on this subject, is that salespeople's quotas our quota attainment is less than ever. 84% of salespeople don't hit their quota in 2024. Salespeople are, we talk about this all the time. As you say, they're walking by more business potentially than they're closing.
Most people walk by more business than they get.
Right. Yet our ability to, and I firsthand see this every day, so this is not an opinion. This is what I'm seeing as a fact, but our ability now to enable sales organizations, not just individuals, but sales management, outside sales, inside sales, whatever your role is, marketing, whatever your role is in that revenue generation process, the ability to enable has never been greater, and the results that can be obtained have never been higher. And it's an area that goes way beyond, hey, I did some training on our products, right? I know there's probably a lot of things like that are being done on trading on the product. Bob's saying, well, how do you define sales enablement, right? To me, and maybe it's not the best word, but how do you enable, whether it's a sales individual or a salesperson, a sales manager, a sales executive, how do you enable them to maximize the results, the potential results that are potentially obtainable based on their market and their customers? And that bar has, or the ability to accomplish that, has really, really increasing and continue to increase. So a lot of the things that we worked on in our sessions this week in New York were sales enablement, quote unquote, related things, and just some of the things that are coming out of that, and what surfaced was, literally undefinable, I guess, prior to going through the process. So anyway, this article talks a lot about sales enablement being everything. Everything is sales enablement. How do you enable salespeople to spend less time on administrivia actions and things like that? All of that are parts of the puzzle for that enablement aspect.
Right. That's great. Good. So I think you captured that really good. They talk about in this the handful of other statistics that they come out of this in managing that sales enablement component. I think it's good. I think the question about what is sales enablement is important. I think the reality of it is most companies don't do much of it in general, other than they might say, "Oh, we bought a CRM and we do some training," right? So there's just so much more of it in the day and age, and that all ties into what we're learning in general from our overall discussions about where AI is taking us as well. So we have a people and leadership segment we look to each week. We rarely get a chance to talk much about this, but there's one article at the end of this. It's called "Not All Leaders Need to or Should Manage Others," and there's part of that is people are cut out for leading, and it kind of ties well to the very last article that we have today in the newsletter, which is in our great read segment. We try and have a section in here each week where there's something unique that's thought-provoking, and that is from smartbrief.com. It says how the skill of influencing others help you become an effective leader. So if you are in a leadership role, becoming effective at it is great. And this talks about just some frameworks of it. It talks about the trust first framework, reliability as a currency within a business, and understanding messaging and so forth. And then it talks about connections versus a correction. I love that, right? About the how few people listen well, and what are our real goals when we're trying to help and lead others. So 2 great articles here from the newsletter in general, about one in our great reads and listen section, and one in people and leadership on those 2. So I enjoyed both of those. I don't know if you caught any of that as well.
Yep.
Good. Well, let's wrap this up for the day, huh? Anything exciting for the weekend?
Let's see. I'm going to a birthday party tonight. I'm going to a beer fest tomorrow. So it's a good thing I gotta, get a good night's sleep.
Are you doing that all without leaving your block, or do you have to go somewhere?
I have to go somewhere. 2 places.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm confident the beer fest is within 50 feet of your house, though.
Oh no, it's at a park. It's a big thing.
Okay.
In town.
Gotcha.
I went last year. It was really cool.
Very good.
I think all the local breweries and craft breweries and stuff here in town, and you pay a fixed price and you can sample as much as you want. They have wineries too. They had some good wineries there last year as well.
That's great. Good. I'm planning on drinking some wine this weekend. So just because people care about that. So as we wind down, appreciate all your effort in preparing this for us today. Glad you got your microphone fixed. As we said, the struggle of a live show is that once in a while you get some hiccups that come, but we're appreciative of everybody that joins us here each week. One great question or favor that we would ask you, if you enjoy what you hear, whether you're listening on the live show and stream on YouTube Live, LinkedIn Live, and Facebook Live, or you're listening to the recorded show later in the day or another time down the road, the best thing that you could do to be of help to us is to share this with others. If you, even if you're listening to the live show on, say, LinkedIn as an example, pop onto your smartphone. If you have Apple or Spotify podcasts there, and most particularly the most impactful one is Apple. Just follow the show and leave a little review there. If you're on YouTube, just click the subscribe button, and that helps us out a lot. And then on LinkedIn, just share with others that you enjoy what you hear. Again, we cover this newsletter each week that those of you that have been watching the live show and or a recording of that later on the stream formats, you got to see the newsletter that we have. If you're listening on a recorded version, you don't get to see that. But if you would like to get that newsletter, we would love to share it with you. 10,000 plus people around the world get it. That number is growing all the time. And the simple way to do that is send us an email at hello@leadsmarttech.com or go to the show's website, which is www.aroundthehornpod.com, and we will get that right out to you. I think we had a handful of requests even this morning, Tom. And last but not least, we couldn't promote this show and get it out there and have the editor on the back end, John and his team, and Lily on the front end of getting it all ready for us if it wasn't for the company that Tom and I work for, Lead Smart Technologies. We are a company that brings siloed data and the multitude of data sources that you have from across your business, ERP, e-commerce, marketing automation, structured, unstructured data. We bring that together in a single platform. We like to refer to it as an enterprise growth platform, where you look at your business holistically and can take advantage of all of that to get prescriptive advice, push notifications and alerts to your team on what's important and what do they need to be working on that day that are going to move the needles in your business. So if your company's digitally transforming, looking to get more out of the data that you already have and help your people understand where their time is best spent, we would love to talk with you and share more about what we do. And you can reach out to us at that same email address, hello@leadsmarttech.com. So, Tom, thanks again. We'll look forward to seeing you next week, and we'll look forward to everybody joining us on the upcoming shows as well. And we'll wish you a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.